People are often asking for help and they're not getting the support that they need.
I also spoke with Tasha's divorce attorney. He told me he only met with her 2 or 3 times and that there were, quote, 0 red flags. Reporting in Enoch, Jenna Bree, Fox 13 News, Utah.
A judge has sentenced a member of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City to 6.5 years in prison for helping defraud thousands of people nationwide in a telemarketing scam. Jennifer Shaw, who sobbed as she apologized for her crimes prior to the announcement of the sentence in a New York courtroom, admitted her guilt last July. She pledged to pay back more than $6 million in restitution. Prosecutors said that she used the profits to live a life of luxury, including a nearly 10,000 square foot mansion in Park City, Utah, a Porsche, and other luxury goods. And in Michigan, a legal battle is brewing over the lawsuits in the deadly Oxford High School shooting. A new filing on behalf of the school is asking a judge to toss out a lawsuit in state court seeking to hold the district and staff members accountable. In their filing, attorneys for the school district say the lawsuit is without legal merit because the immediate proximate cause of the tragedy falls on the shooter, who pleaded guilty, and not the district. The filing also says governmental immunity shields the school from claims of negligence. A judge could rule on that motion at any time. And finally, 14 years ago, a letter from a grave helped convict a Wisconsin husband whose wife died in bed after ingesting antifreeze. Julie Jensen's handwritten words incriminated her husband, Mark Jensen, as the prime suspect if anything happened to her. Mark Jensen was eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison, but thanks to an appeal, he was granted a new trial, which begins next week.
Is it my understanding that you have reached a verdict? Is that correct?
Yes. We, the jury, find the defendant, Mark D. Jensen, guilty of intentional homicide of the first degree as charged in the information.
Mark Daniel Jensen was found guilty of his wife's murder in February of 2008 and sentenced to life in prison.
If this case ever comes back, I'll try the damn thing again because Mark Jensen belongs in prison.
And the case did come back. After years of legal battles in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, Jensen was granted a new trial. Only this time, it would exclude a letter written by his wife. And prosecutor Robert Jan Boyce kept his word, returning to prosecute Jensen a second time for the killing of his wife.
The idea of a hung jury just stuck sideways in my throat because then there's no closure for anyone. And after almost 10 years, there had to be some closure.
Jensen was convicted on evidence that included a letter from his wife, Julie, who wrote before her death, "If anything happens to me, Mark would be the first suspect." Now, a new jury will hear the evidence against Jensen, but his wife's letter cannot be introduced this time around.
She had the envelope in her hands, and she said if anything happened, I should give this to the police.
The reason why the letter is the source of numerous appeals is because Mark Jensen's attorneys are not able to cross-examine Julie Jensen, who wrote the letter, because she's dead.
The prosecution claims Jensen killed his wife with antifreeze in order to be with his mistress. Prosecutors argued his internet search history provided evidence that he was looking for ways to make Julie's death look like a suicide.
Do you remember who started complaining about whose wife first?
You know, I think it really was Mark. Mark told me if you wanted to get rid of your wife, that you could go to websites that would tell you how to poison your wife, how it would not be detectable.
Jensen's attorneys argue Julie was depressed and killed herself and framed her husband out of spite.
What was your understanding as to why Mrs. Jensen was coming in to see you?
She was very upset, and it seemed like she was there because she wanted some help. She was upset enough that I gave her medicine and strongly encouraged her to seek counseling as well as to follow up with me.
A case that began 25 years ago will have one final day in court, with 125 witnesses expected to take the stand to determine whether Mark Jensen murdered his wife back in 1998. And folks, starting next week, we will bring this trial to you live right here on Court TV. All right, coming up next in our Talkback segment, you want to know what you think about the case against the man accused of killing 4 college students in Idaho? Leave your comments on our social media pages, and then we're going to read some of them right on the other side of the break. Keep it right here on Court TV.
There was pounding on the door. Bang, bang, bang. He said that we'd seen his face and there was no way that he could ever let us go.
I survived because I'm a born fighter.
I Survive, next on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, 4 college students murdered and their alleged killer in custody. Court TV teams are live from Idaho with the very latest.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central. 71985.
Count 1 of the criminal complaint charges you with the felony offense of burglary. It alleges that the defendant, Brian C. Koberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder.
On November 17th, autopsies were conducted and the Latah County coroner confirmed the identity of the 4 victims. The cause and manner of death was homicide by stabbing.
These tragic murders took 4 young, vibrant lives from our community. Nothing we do can bring them back.
Welcome back. It is time for today's Talkback segment. Each day, we post a question on Court TV's social media pages. We gather your comments and questions and then respond right here on the show. Well, the defendant in the Idaho college student killings appeared in court on Thursday and was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. Police also released a shocking probable cause affidavit detailing the evidence against the suspect, Brian Koberger. So we asked you, what do you think of the evidence and of this case? Still with me, former criminal defense attorney Kirk Nurmi and forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Pettler. Guys, our first comment comes from Brian. Brian says the 12 visits prior to the crime scene proves meditation. And Kirk, I find that interesting because there was some discussion about the need for a motive and a connection in this case. But I think the stalking really provides that. I don't think juries need much more than the fact that he was stalking them, he's a psychopath, et cetera, et cetera. You get the right experts to come in and testify to that. I don't think you need a motive necessarily in this case.
You know, I tend to agree with you. Most of the times we have motives, and motives can help make stories complete, right? They can help fill in the blanks. But in this case, we've got a lot of really strong evidence. And you're right, Michael, if this was the possibility that this was just a stranger, a stalking, but really a casing, a hunting, if you will, as the deceased father said, you know, those experts could fill in those blanks and in essence tell that story, because that by default comes the motion. If he is of such disturbed mind that this is what he was doing with this idea of killing, and it didn't matter who it was, so to speak, then I think that really fills in those blanks and really kind of creates a motive by default, if you will.
All right, our next comment, guys, comes from Rachel. Rachel says, he was acting very cool, calm, and disconnected, not the demeanor of someone who is not guilty and totally overwhelmed by the whole process. Gosh, this opens up a lot of things, Dr. Pettler. It opens up this idea that, yeah, he was attracted to the whole idea of law enforcement and criminology, et cetera, because he's this type of person. Tell me about what you think about this connection between his background and his education and what he sought to study and this crime.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said about his education, his focus. It's clearly on criminology and the study of the brain, the study of psychology. I believe his bachelor's degree is in psychology. He likes to understand how people think and what makes them tick, and all of the behavior and emotionality, the cognition and the motives behind their behavior. And that was specifically the question that he posed in his survey: is what emotions and psychological traits do you think people experience related to the crimes they commit? And I think it's an interesting take on it. From the staging standpoint, related to motive, one of the things I think is important to mention here is one of the trends that we are not sure yet, research-wise, if it's a trend yet, is that when juries are not provided with a motive in a staged murder, which this is not, they are acquitting. We saw this with Ohio versus Michael Moore. And so, like, I'm wondering in this case, like what Kirk was saying, do they really need a motive? Do they really need that? Because you have all of this underpinning and this foundational fixation on them that everybody knows that studies stalking in relation to homicide. Oftentimes, stalking is the precursor to homicide. So I agree that there may not be a necessity as much in this case for a motive.
Yeah, and when you read the fact that he was out there 12 times, or at least his phone suggests he was in the area, it really blew your mind. You're like, whoa, you know, this, again, it hammers it. It just really hammers it home. Our next comment, guys, comes from Becky. Becky says, his father isn't being investigated, yet his DNA was at the scene too. His father came to drive across country with him, and he is in criminology. How do we know that his father isn't part of this? Well, let me correct Becky. The father's DNA was not found at the scene. It was the DNA of his son. What they did was they got something from the trash of the family home, used that DNA, which was from the father, tested it against the DNA at the scene. What it came back and said was it was 99.99% sure that the person of the DNA found on that sheath was the son of the man. So he wasn't there, right, Kurt?
That's correct. The DNA was used, and this is a perfect example of genealogical DNA and what law enforcement can do, the tools they can use in terms of going across the country or anywhere in this globe and taking discarded garbage, which isn't protected by the Fourth Amendment. You don't have a privacy interest in the garbage you throw away, and they can take that, analyze it, and draw that connection.
All right, yeah, it was great to see. We were all wondering how they had made the connection, and there it was. All right, thanks to Dr. Laura Pettler, Kirk Nurmi for being with us tonight. Really enjoyed you guys. Appreciate that. Coming up next, we're going to review the 3 things we learned today and the cases we'll be covering from coast to coast here on Court TV.
InsideEthosLife.com.
Welcome back, folks. Today has been a busy day, as always, here on Court TV Live. So here are 3 things that we've learned. First, in Idaho, some of the victims' families are pushing for the death penalty for suspect Brian Kohlberger. Kaylee Gonsalves' dad said justice would include death for Kohlberger. It'll be up to the state on whether the death penalty will be sought. Second, Lori Daybell's attorney has filed a new motion seeking to allow Lori and Chad Daybell to meet in person to discuss a possible settlement in the case. The pair are slated to go on trial next month for the murders of Lori's 2 children and Chad's ex-wife. And third, a cast member of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City was sentenced today in federal court to 6.5 years for fraud. Jennifer Shaw pleaded guilty last summer to those fraud charges. All right, I'm Michael Ayala. It's been a pleasure being with you tonight. Coming up next, I Survived. Then ahead at 8 p.m. Eastern, tune into Closing Arguments. Vinnie Politan breaks down Brian Kohlberger's route to the alleged murder plus. You'll have the case of a man arrested for buying a 34-cent lollipop